Medina Lake is disappearing right now, today. Not over a century, not over decades. Now, a lake that once held nearly 255,000 acre-feet of water sits at just 4% capacity. That is not a seasonal low. That is not an unusually dry spell. That is the statistical measurement of a body of water that has fundamentally ceased to exist in any meaningful way. And here is the part that nobody is talking about. It isn't just thirst. The lake is physically leaking. It is draining like a cracked bathtub straight into the ground. A massive engineering marvel from a century ago, built on a fatal geologic flaw. Let us know in the comments if you've ever seen a lake this low. We read every single one. But even that is not the whole story. The real story started 14 years ago, 80 miles to the north, in a small town called Spicewood Beach, the first modern Texas town to hit absolute zero, 100% dry. Its fate is the blueprint for what is coming to the communities around Medina Lake. This isn't a warning, it's a case study. Many people watch our documentaries and get so absorbed in the details they forget to subscribe. If this kind of deep reporting is important to you, please take 1 second to hit that subscribe button. It is the only way we can continue to bring these stories to light. Let's begin. To understand what happens when a community's water supply physically vanishes, you have to go back to January 2012. Spicewood Beach, Texas, an unincorporated community in Burnett County, nestled near the shores of another jewel of the hill country, Lake Travis. For years, residents lived a life defined by water. Then the water went away. The town's wells, which drew from the local water table connected to the lake, started sucking mud. Not low pressure, mud. The taps sputtered, hissed, and then went silent. Spicewood Beach became the first town in Texas to go completely 100% dry. That is not a dramatic phrase. It is a technical reality. The Lower Colorado River Authority, the LECRA, had to declare an emergency. They dispatched massive 7,000-gallon tanker trucks, driving water in every single day, just to fill the town's municipal storage tanks. For the residents, life became a grim arithmetic of survival. Each household was rationed, 50 gallons per day. Kathy Mull, a resident living through the outage, described the uncertainty. 50 gallons a day is all we're allowed per household, she said. It's kind of hard to know where this is going to go and how long this is going to be. 50 gallons. That's enough for a few toilet flushes, a quick shower, washing the dishes. That is the entire budget. Gone was the idea of watering a lawn, washing a car, or any casual use of water that modern life takes for granted. Life was reduced to a daily delivery. The sound of the tanker truck became the sound of survival. That is the precedent. That is the documented, lived reality of what happens when the numbers on a chart become the silence coming from your kitchen faucet. And the conditions that made Spicewood Beach a cautionary tale are now gathering around Medina Lake with an intensity that dwarfs the 2012 drought. Medina Lake was born from a dream, the dream of a French colonial impresario named Henri Castro. In the 1850s, more than half a century before the dam existed, Castro looked out over the Medina River Valley and envisioned an agricultural paradise. He saw the fertile soil, the long growing season, but he knew it lacked the one thing it needed to truly flourish: reliable water. He dreamed of damming the Medina River, but he lacked the capital to make it real. That dream lay dormant for 60 years. Then, in November 1911, construction began. It was a monumental undertaking, a private venture fueled by capitalist ambition, designed to turn the Golden Valley of Medina into a farming empire. For 2 years, an army of workers toiled. They built what was, upon its completion on May 7, 1913, the largest dam in Texas, and the fourth largest in the entire United States. A concrete behemoth, 1,580 feet long and soaring 164 feet high. It was an engineering triumph, a symbol of man's power to reshape the Texas landscape. But it was built on a catastrophic mistake. The engineers who selected the site severely underestimated the geology of the Texas hill country. The dam was constructed directly on top of highly porous karst limestone, specifically the Glen Rose limestone and the Caner Formation of the Edwards Group. This isn't solid bedrock. This is rock that acts like a sponge, riddled with cracks, fissures, and channels. It is the literal recharge zone for the Edwards Aquifer, the massive underground water system that provides drinking water to nearly 2 million people in San Antonio and Bexar County. For a century, Medina Lake has functioned less like a bucket and more like a leaky funnel. It was a secret everyone knew, a quirk of geography that didn't seem to matter when the rains were plentiful. The original irrigation company went bankrupt. Its successors went bankrupt. Finally, in 1950, the entire asset, the dam, the infrastructure, a project that cost $6 million to build in 1913, was sold at a foreclosure auction. The buyer was the newly formed Bexar Medina Atascosa County's Water Control and Improvement District No. 1, or BMA. The final sale price? $10. A $10 dam, built on a geologic flaw that would, 70 years later, threaten to bankrupt an entire region. The lake is leaking in two places, and only one of them is natural. The first leak is the one built into the earth itself. Every day, thousands of acre-feet of water don't evaporate, they simply drain. They drop straight through the porous lake bed, disappearing into the limestone fractures below. A 2024-2025 report by USC's hydrologists Richard N. Slattery, Namjung Choi, and Alan K. Clark finally put hard numbers on this century-old problem, quantifying exactly how much of Medina Lake's water recharges the Edwards and underlying Trinity aquifers. It creates a bizarre and deeply uncomfortable paradox. The very geological crack that is destroying Medina Lake and decimating the lakeside economies of towns like Lake Hills and Bandera is the same crack that is feeding the primary water supply for the massive, sprawling metropolis of San Antonio. San Antonio's water utility, SAWS, doesn't even want the surface water from Medina Lake. They claim its quality is too low to treat. They depend on the aquifer that the lake is involuntarily and disastrously refilling. The slow death of Medina Lake helps keep the taps on for 1.85 million people downstream. And if you think that's a broken system, let us know what you would do to fix it in the comments below. That is the first leak. The second one is entirely man-made. When the BMA releases water from the dam for its agricultural customers, it doesn't travel through modern sealed pipes. It flows through a 312-mile network of unlined earthen dirt canals that are 110 years old. These are not state-of-the-art irrigation channels. They are ditches, and they leak massively. Up to 75% of the water released from the dam never reaches a single crop. 75%. It is lost to seepage into the dry ground and evaporation under the brutal Texas sun. So picture this. You have a lake at 4% capacity, hovering dangerously close to being unusable. You make the decision to release some of that precious, irreplaceable water for farmers, and 3/4 of it vanishes into thin air and dry dirt before it can do any good. It is an act of breathtaking inefficiency, releasing water from a dying lake into a century-old network of dirt ditches that functions as a 312-mile-long sponge. It's not just a drought problem, it's an infrastructure problem, a management problem, a crisis of a system that has not adapted in over 100 years. This slow-motion catastrophe has a name, a technical designation for the point of no return. It's called deadpool. The term gets thrown around, but it is not dramatic shorthand. It's a precise engineering measurement for a genuinely apocalyptic condition. For Medina Lake, the deadpool elevation is 912.2 feet. When the water level drops below that mark, it can no longer physically flow out of the lowest outlet in the dam. Gravity stops working. The lake ceases to be a reservoir. It stops being an irrigation source. It stops being a flood control mechanism. It becomes a collection of stagnant, isolated puddles, disconnected from the river system, overheating in the sun, where biological degradation accelerates. The water becomes unusable for any purpose. The multi-million-dollar homes lining its shores become worthless waterfront property, overlooking a toxic mudflat. Medina Lake hit deadpool status in April 2025. It then fell even further, to a historic all-time low of roughly 2%. For years now, the lake has been functionally dead. As of late May 2026, it sat at exactly 4.0% capacity, an elevation of 977.12 feet. Barely above the dead pool line, but still fundamentally a ghost of itself. A brief flash flood in mid-June 2026, when Red Bluff Creek rejoined the river, pushed the level up about 4 feet to 5.2%. It was a psychological boost, a moment of hope. But it was statistically meaningless. Meteorologists called it a band-aid on 6 years of deep, compounding drought. It solved nothing. Mike Crandall, the owner of Wally's Water Sports in Lake Hills, and a founder of the advocacy group Save Medina Lake, saw the water flowing in. Yesterday, the river was moving from up toward Bandera all the way into the lake, he said, and you could actually see it flowing in. Seeing that water move today gives people out here a little bit of hope. Hope for a 4-foot rise in a lake that is down over 90 feet. That is the desperation of the situation. People are clinging to any sign of life, no matter how fleeting. Sarah Voss, who owns the Sunset Resort at the lake, has watched her business and her life savings evaporate with the water. The brief rains brought a flicker of optimism, but the fundamental math has not changed. The lake is structurally broken. If you think more people need to understand the scale of this crisis, please hit the like button. And if you have family in Texas or other drought-stricken areas, please share this documentary with them. Getting the word out is the first step. The disappearance of the lake creates a domino effect that is now toppling the region's other water sources. The communities around the lake, like Bandera and Lake Hills, don't just rely on the surface water. They rely on private wells drilled into the aquifers below. With the lake gone, there is less recharge for these local water tables. And with explosive population growth, more and more wells are being drilled, all sucking from the same diminishing supply. They are now drilling into the lower Trinity Aquifer, a deep, ancient water source. Some of this water is 20,000 years old. It is, for all practical purposes, a non-renewable resource, fossil water, and even those wells are starting to fail. Dave Mauk is the general manager of the Bandera County River Authority and Groundwater District. He is not an activist, he is a water manager staring at the data. And the data terrifies him. This drought is punishing, and it's looking to be worse than the drought in the 50s, he warned the Bandera City Council. The 1950s drought is the stuff of Texas legend, the benchmark for all modern suffering. Mauk is saying this is worse. Eventually we will hit a wall here, he said. I implore you all to start looking to the future and conserve as much as you can. His warning was not abstract. Just weeks after the hopeful June rains gave Medina Lake its brief 4-foot bump, the city of Bandera was forced to return to Stage 3 water restrictions because their municipal wells refused to recharge. The Band-Aid had already been ripped off. The wound was still there. The water that fell from the sky was just a momentary illusion. The deep groundwater, the water they depend on to survive day to day, was still disappearing. This is the Spicewood Beach scenario playing out in slow motion. The town of Bandera is not at 100% dry. Not yet, but the trajectory is clear. The arithmetic is brutal. When your deep, reliable wells stop recovering, you are on a countdown. The only question is how long it will last. Compounding all of this is a situation of such institutional absurdity, it would be comical if it weren't so devastating. A legal battle between the two biggest players in the region, the BMA, who owns the $10 dam, and the San Antonio Water System, SAWS. For years, SAWS has been locked into a contract that forces them to pay the BMA $3 million annually. For what? For 19,974 acre-feet of water from Medina Lake. Water that SAWS says is of such low quality, it's not worth treating. Water that, in recent years, often doesn't even exist. SAWS doesn't want the water. They don't use the water, but they have to pay for it. In October 2023, SAWS had enough. They filed a lawsuit entering aggressive litigation to terminate the contract once and for all. They argue it's an obsolete agreement that forces their ratepayers to subsidize a failing water system for water they will never receive. The BMA's response reveals the true nature of the trap. In 2022, the BMA used the guaranteed $3 million annual payment from SAWS as collateral to back $12 million in new bonds. They leveraged a hostile contract with a partner who was actively trying to sue them, locking SAWS into a financial embrace it desperately wants to escape. The two entities are now legally shackled together in a standoff. SAWS is forced to fund the very organization it sees as mismanaging the resource, while the BMA depends on that funding for its own survival. And while the lawyers argue, the lake continues to disappear. The 312 miles of earthen canals continue to leak. The systemic problems remain unaddressed, frozen by litigation and institutional inertia. A group of frustrated residents and business owners formed the organization Save Medina Lake, a 5014 advocacy group. They are not waiting for the lawsuit. They are petitioning the Texas Sunset Advisory Commission, a state body that reviews the efficiency of government agencies, to force state oversight onto the BMA. They argue the BMA has operated for a century with almost no accountability, and the result is a dead lake and a dying regional economy. They are fighting an uphill battle against a political subdivision that has been entrenched for generations. It is a fight over who controls the water, or what's left of it. I know, I'm probably asking a second time, but seeing the numbers on our end, it's genuinely how we survive. So many people find value in this reporting but forget to subscribe. If you have made it this far into the details, you are not a casual viewer. Please, take 1 second and join us. It makes all the difference. What does the future look like? There are no easy answers. The history of the lake since 2014 offers a grim preview. In May 2014, the lake dropped to a then-historic low of roughly 3%. It looked like the end. Then, in May 2015, a miracle. The wettest May on record in Texas history arrived. Storm after storm rolled through the hill country, unleashing biblical floods. The drought was broken, spectacularly. Lakes across the state filled up. Medina Lake recovered. For a moment, it seemed the cycle was reset. The crisis was over. It was an intermission. The underlying problems, the geological leak, the inefficient canals, the relentless growth in population, the warming climate, none of them went away. The memory of rain faded. The dry years returned, one after another, each one digging the water debt a little deeper. 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. By April 2025, the lake was back at deadpool, lower than it had ever been before. The Great Flood of 2015 was erased. The recovery was gone. Now, in 2026, the lake sits at the bottom of that long decline. The 4-foot rise from a June rainstorm was a blip. A momentary spike on a graph that is still trending toward zero. The drainage basin that feeds the lake is only 634 square miles. It is simply too small to keep a reservoir of this size full during the kind of multi-year, systemic droughts that are becoming the new normal in Texas. The water managers know this. The residents know this. The business owners who have watched their livelihoods dry up know this. They are trapped between a flawed past and an uncertain future. Trapped by the decisions made by engineers in 1911 who picked the wrong spot. Trapped by the inefficiency of a water district that won the dam for $10 and has operated it the same way ever since. Trapped by a climate that no longer delivers the rain they once took for granted. Stand on the edge of what was once Medina Lake. Look at the exposed bluffs, the vast plains of cracked mud dotted with mesquite trees where people used to water ski. Look at the boat docks, sitting hundreds of yards from the water's edge, like stranded skeletons. Look at the waterline stains on the cliffs high above, a ghostly reminder of where the water used to be. That stain isn't ancient history, it's living memory. That is the visual record of what has been lost. It's what happens when a natural cycle of drought collides with a century of human error. Medina Lake is not just a victim of the weather, it is a casualty of its own design. The story of Spicewood Beach in 2012 was a singular event, a shocking first. A town's wells going dry felt like a freak occurrence. It is not a freak occurrence anymore. It is a template. The communities clinging to the shores of Medina Lake are watching their own wells struggle. They are watching their property values collapse. They are watching their future evaporate into the hot Texas sky and seep into the ground beneath their feet. The question is no longer if another Texas town will go 100% dry.